Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little. I'm here today with another hand for PokerNews.com. We get pocket queens on the button. Hello. We like to open it up to 400. Small blind decides they want to play, and they make it 1,200. So we made it about 2.7 big blinds. The opponent makes it 3 times from the small blind. In general, when you're playing very deep stacked, like we are here, the opponent's going to want to make it a little bit bigger just to try to cut off my implied odds in position. When you are out of position, you want to make the pot big because that makes the stack to pot ratio smaller. Typically from out of position, you want to get more money in pre-flop so that the player in position has a smaller edge. As stacks get deeper, the person in position typically has an edge. So anyway, it's a little bit of rambling on why I like 3.5x or maybe even 4x from the small blind when deep as opposed to 3x, or you'll see some people make it 900 here, and I think that's a huge mistake. Because then I'm just going to call every time and I'm in position, and that's not going to work out so well for the opponent. So now, should I 4-bet? Well, my hand's certainly good enough to 4-bet. In general, though, in tournaments, I tend to not do a whole lot of 4-betting unless I know I can very easily get it all in. So here, if I make it 3,000 and my opponent shoves all in, am I happy to call it off? Well, I think the answer is definitely no, right? I mean, we're going to call it off, but I'm certainly not loving it. Next question is, if I make it 3,000 and the opponent calls, am I loving that spot? Well, I'm happy enough with it, but at the same time, I think if I call the 1,200, I'm going to be able to essentially never fold on very many flops and turns, and that's going to allow me to see the showdown with a very underrepresented hand. So I'm not doing a whole lot of 4-betting here, and in reality, it's probably just going to be like aces and kings and some bluffs, like, well, ace-x offsuit or something like that, a blocker hand. But if you are 3-betting or 4-betting wider with stuff like pocket 10s and better and ace-queen and better and king-queen and maybe a lot of bluffs, I think that's fine. But I typically just don't take that route in tournaments where losing big pots is very, very detrimental. So let's see if I call or 4-bet. Either one's fine. Just don't fold. Don't fold your good hands. All right, flop comes 6-5-2, which is great. The opponent now bets small, and this is a spot where I think we have a pretty easy call. If you play around with game theory optimal programs, they may tell you to raise here. And you may think, what? Why raise? Well, it would suggest raise because if you don't have aces or kings in your range, what is the top of my range? Well, it's 6s, 5s, and 2s, and then queens, and then jacks, and then 10s. Are there a lot of draws available on this board? Well, yeah, right? All the hearts are available to raise. We could also raise with random ace-4 suited and ace-3 suiteds that would call the 3-bet in position. So as you see, there are a ton of draws available. And when there are a ton of draws available, raising certainly has a lot of merit with your draws. And if you're raising with a lot of draws, you have to compensate by adding more made hands to your range, assuming you're trying to be unexploitable. Now, you can certainly debate whether or not we want to be unexploitable here. And usually in tournaments, you don't care so much about being balanced because you're usually only going to play against these players 1 or 2 times in your whole life. So it just doesn't matter. But at the same time, I always try to start from that stance and then deviate based on how I would like to proceed, because this is a tournament, because maybe we think our opponent's particularly strong when he makes it 1,200 pre-flop, etc., as opposed to 1,400 or something like that. Anyway, this is a spot where I'm usually just calling and going from there. Again, just don't fold. So turns of 3, which is, scary enough turn, but certainly fine. A lot of people get deathly afraid whenever the turn brings 4 to a straight, but we don't have to be so concerned about a 4. I mean, really, the only 4s we have to worry about are ace-4 suited, which there are only 4 combinations of that. Then maybe, 5-4 suited? Maybe 7-4 suited? Maybe 6-4 suited? As you can see, there just aren't a ton of possible hands the opponent could even have. So it's way more likely the opponent has a worse overpair, ace-high, total garbage like jack-10, etc. So this is a spot where I think we can either check, looking to induce a river bluff. If our opponent bets river, we easily call. Or we can bet the turn and then probably bet the river for value, mainly trying to get called by the overpairs that are worse than mine. So let's see what I do this time. It depends a lot on how often I think the opponent's going to be aggressive. If the opponent's going to check raise me on the turn a lot, I would much rather check behind because I really don't want to get check raised here. If the opponent's check raising all of his nut hands, well, all the straights at least, and then some unknown combination of, or on some unknown number of bluffs, because I don't know if the opponent's bluffing a ton, in which case I should call every time, or if the opponent's bluffing never, in which case I should never call. So anyway, I did bet this time, so apparently I don't think the opponent's going to be particularly aggressive. Opponent calls, which is great. River's a 6 of hearts. So now, the opponent checks again. Can we go for value? Okay, the river put up a backdoor heart draw. So when that happens, you always want to be asking yourself, what was I trying to get value from before? Well, that is jacks, 10s, 9s, 8s, 7s, and then maybe some random like ace 6 or something like that. Will those hands call again if I bet the river? And if so, how much will they call? Will they call a big bet? Will they call a little bet? And this is a very exploitable strategy because we are trying to get called by exactly the subset of hands we think we are against. You know, we're making somewhat big assumptions about our opponent's game. We think he's not going to bluff us very often, for example. Some people will read into a small river bet size and think, oh my God, this guy's obviously weak. Therefore, I'm going to shove all in and try to make him fold all of his weak range. And clearly we don't want that to happen here because we're going to fold. So anyway, this is a spot where typically when I'm approaching most players, especially if they are more amateur / recreational, I am definitely going to be betting small for value. This is a spot where a lot of people cannot fold pocket 10s or 9s or maybe even 7s. They just find a hero call because they have a pair. If I bet small, like 2,500 or 3,000, I do expect to get called a lot by worse hands. If I bet bigger, though, like 6,000 or 7,000, well, now I think we're pretty much only going to get called when we're beat. So this is a spot where if I'm going to bet, I need to bet small. It is worth mentioning we could be beat here. Don't think that we are impervious from losing this pot. We could certainly be against something like 6-5 or pocket 2s that decided to play it oddly. You know, maybe that player's just deathly afraid of straights on the turn and decided to check it. I mean, I guess 8-6 suited is a hand, or 8-5 suited is a hand we could be against. Not too likely, but realize when we are value betting, we are going to be beat sometimes. We're going to lose some money. This is a spot, though, where I do think against most players who are not that creative and who are not going to get well out of line, we can justify a value bet of 2,500 or so. I do go 3,600, so a little bit on the big side. I probably got the vibe that my opponent liked his hand enough to call, with like pocket 9s or something like that. Again, we can just lose to aces and kings, finding more and more hands we lose to as we proceed. But I like this bet. I think I should probably go a little bit smaller, though. I think if we go smaller, as long as the small bet's not going to induce a raise from a lot of junk and marginal made hands, I think a smaller bet's going to really ensure we get called by 7s or ace-6 or 8-7 or something like that. So anyway, I do go 3,600 and we get called. So we're probably happy. Not this time. Opponent had 8-6 suited and we lose. So like I said, sometimes we're going to lose in this spot and that's okay. I still think going for value on this river is fine. I'm sure everyone in the comment section is going to say, oh my God, you idiot, that's way too wide. No one's ever calling you with pocket 9s here, but I think in practice you will see that they do. So that's going to be it for this hand for PokerNews.com. If you like this type of video, check out my poker training site, PokerCoaching.com. There I have a ton of interactive quizzes. Instead of just showing you what I do in spots like this, I actually make you tell me what you would do in spots like this, and then I let you know what I think about it. So check that out at PokerCoaching.com. You can get a completely free 7-day trial. Thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you next week.